On this video I want to talk about an undeniable reason to use HLG over Dolby Vision, which is the best HDR you can get. Basically it's Dolby Vision or HDR10 Plus. Why would you do that? This makes no sense. There is actually one undeniable reason to use HLG over those, and that is black frame insertion. So you look at this Halo Infinite, which has Dolby Vision on Xbox Series X, which is the best HDR you can get. But with black frame insertion, everything becomes dark. So the option would be HDR10 with dynamic tone mapping on. That is acceptable. You can use it. It works well, but it doesn't look as bright as HLG with dynamic tone mapping on. So just look at this, how bright this looks. Nobody can tell that that Motion Pro is on because it looks so bright. So the reason why this works so well is because actually tone mapping on, dynamic tone mapping on with HLG is overly bright. It's extremely bright. So that's exactly what you need to use Motion Pro. So actually, on my comparisons, in my perception, this option looks a little bit brighter than no tone mapping, so tone mapping off without Motion Pro. This looks a little bit brighter. It looks less bright than HGIG. So if you use HLG with HGIG, it gives you an overall brighter image, but with less highlight. That option looks brighter, a little bit brighter than this dynamic tone mapping on and Motion Pro. So I would say this option is between tone mapping off, which is the best picture quality in my opinion when you are using HLG, and HGIG. But if you're not gonna use Motion Pro, there's absolutely no reason to use HLG on this game because it has Dolby Vision native. I mean, on Xbox it has native Dolby Vision support, and the HDR10 is good. I haven't tried it extensively, but I think it is good. You can try both, but when you have a good HDR10 implementation, there's no reason to use HLG unless you're gonna use Motion Pro. So this is actually fantastic. Let me see if you can notice the numbers here. So I'm getting a rock solid 120 frames at 4K. So it's actually not real 4K all the time because on the settings I have dynamic resolution scaling. So on PC, on this game, I have the option to set a minimum frame rate, and the game is going to dynamically lower the resolution to make sure that you hit that target, and that's perfect for black frame insertion because I get a rock solid 120 frames. So this is fantastic. Let me give you one tip before I finish the video. You have to make sure you adjust the black level when you are using dynamic tone mapping with HLG. On my experience, I have to lower it one click. So the black level of my TV is 51 for everything else. But when I use dynamic tone mapping with HLG, it's actually raising it one click. So I have to lower from 51 to the default 50, okay, to have perfect blacks. Otherwise, I'm not getting perfect blacks. So what I do, just in case, I lower that to 49 or just leave it at 50. I am testing one or the other, but I'm getting perfect blacks all the time. So you can try 50, maybe 49, just to make sure, because I would rather crush blacks a little bit and still have perfect black than not have perfect blacks. So, but my recommendation would be double check the black level when you are using dynamic tone mapping on and HLG because it does raises the black level one click in my experience. So the correct setting for my TV would be 50. If I'm not using dynamic tone mapping, then it would be 51. Okay, so yes, that's undeniably HLG is the best setting, period, for Motion Pro. There's no other better option. Let me raise the exposure. I lower the exposure on this video because otherwise it would look too bright. It would look too bright because it's extremely bright. It's perfect. It's not overly bright when you turn on Motion Pro. So just make sure to use Motion Pro, you have to have a rock solid frame rate. So if you're playing on console, make sure the game is locked to 60. Don't use the 120 frames version of the game on console. Why? You see on Digital Foundry videos on console, usually, it's not always. There are some games, I think that Rainbow Six Siege is a rock solid 120, but the majority of games that have a 120 frames option is not rock solid 120. That's very, very difficult to achieve. So I would rather use the 60, the lock 60 option, because that's gonna be consistent. If you don't have a consistent, so by the way, look at this. Let me lower the exposure so it doesn't blow the highlight. Look how good this looks. It's just perfect. I mean, it seems impossible to believe that Motion Pro is amazing. So make sure that you have a rock solid performance. So when you see the Digital Foundry videos about the 120 option in console, if it's not rock solid, if it drops to 100, don't use it with Motion Pro because you're going to get judder. So judder means that you pan the camera and it looks like this, jumping. It's going to jump a little bit. So I would recommend it only with rock solid performance. But why is this so great? Why would I take a downgrade on the visual experience? Because it is a downgrade. This doesn't look better than Dolby Vision or Real HDR10. It's not. It cannot look better. Why would I take the downgrade? Because of the motion resolution, man. 120 with Motion Pro on this TV is my dream. That's what I wanted. It's perfect. You move the camera and there's no blur. Zero blur. The image is perfect. So I do this, for example. For example, we are looking at very fine detail. I do this, is the same. Like, it doesn't blur. I do this. For example, this text here. I do this, I can read the text. No problem. No jumpiness, nothing. It's unbelievable. So good, man. In movement, it's just perfection. That's why I decided to buy this C1 instead of the C2, because the C2 has only black frame insertion for 60 frames. It's a better TV, but it does have that limitation. And the reason why LG is doing that is probably because nobody uses black frame insertion anyway. Why? Because it's too dim. The only way to get it working is with this HLG trick. It looks perfect. So, and by the way, I'd never play multiplayers because with controller it's very difficult. I would rather play with a mouse and keyboard, but then I would need to change my setup to have to be comfortable with the mouse and keyboard. And I usually play just on a share, so I don't have that option. But it looks fantastic, man. For multiplayer, it's like insane. You move the camera. Fortnite, PUBG, Apex Legends, Halo Infinite. What is this other game on Epic Games that I played sometimes? I forgot. So all these multiplayers, if you can get 120 rock solid Motion Pro, incredible, and it looks perfect. I mean, with maxed out graphics I have here, it looks perfect and perfect in movement. So Try it out. Try it out. Even if it's 60 frames, 60 frames, black frame insertion looks better in movement. So the motion resolution is retained better than 120 no black frame insertion. So for example, I guarantee you, if you have a console, try for example the 120 frames version of the game with VRR, and that's great. That's a great experience. But move the camera, do this, and then try the 60 frames version with black frame insertion and this HLG dynamic tone mapping on, and tell me, tell me what you think. It looks better in movement. When you do this, it looks better in movement. The 120 frames is going to feel more responsive. So when you move it's going to feel more responsive. But for multiplayer, it's gonna be better, that option for sure. On console, if you have a performance option that's giving you 90 to 120 frames, that's gonna be better for competitive. Unless you can get 120 frames rock solid. If that's the case, then for sure Motion Pro. So yeah, the questions about input lag, because every time I do a Motion Pro video, people ask me, hey, what about input lag? So on my perception, Motion Pro does not add input lag. So the problem is that instead of using Motion Pro, you could use boost mode, for example. So if you have a 60 frames game, instead of using Motion Pro and ALLM off on the PS5 or those low latency modes, you have to disable them to use Motion Pro. That's the problem. So on PC, I have the NVIDIA ultra low latency mode on the control panel. So it doesn't matter to me. Like, look at the responsiveness. It's perfect. Like I don't see. I can tell you in front of me, it's perfectly responsive. Like there's no lag. So I have the NVIDIA ultra low latency mode, and of course this is 120 frames. But even at 60, that's the problem. You do sacrifice the input lag, but the problem is you have to turn off those low latency modes on the TV itself. So if you come here on Game Optimizer, you don't have boost mode available. So if you don't use Motion Pro and you are at 60, you can use boost mode here. So you are sacrificing input response to use black frame insertion. So for competitive gaming on console, this might not be the best option if you don't have a rock solid 120. But if you do, I think Rainbow Six Siege on console is perfect 120. So you watch Digital Foundry videos about performance. If they tell you, hey, this is a rock solid 120, try it. You'll be amazed how good it looks in movement. It's just beautiful. Like you see a text, you do this, the text is perfectly readable. Like it's so perfect. That's the reason I bought this TV, the main feature. And I was not able to use it at the beginning. That's why I was so frustrated. But with HLG tone mapping on, dynamic tone mapping on, it's perfect. So if you have any questions, let me know. Just to show you the settings before I finish the video. It's perfect, like perfect shadow detail, no problem at all. So bright. So let me show you the settings. Brightness, tone mapping on. Let me see if you can see it on the video. Let's just make it closer for you. Okay, closer. So yeah. So you see tone mapping on. This is standard HDR settings with tone mapping on, and color native 50. So if you are on PC mode, you cannot change this color gamut and Game Optimizer mode. So you can change to console mode, or use the color control app on a PC So you can change this color gamut on a PC using the color control app, and then you can use it on your console, because with that color control app you can change the setting of a different HDMI port. Okay, so but if you don't want to do that, or you just want an easy solution, just don't use PC mode. So yeah, and game optimizer mode on game console, I think it does give you the option. Not sure though, it might not. I can test it now if you want. So let me test it now. Let me see what else we have here. You know, you go to clarity, true motion. This is what I'm talking about, OLED Motion Pro. So let me actually test right now. So let me show you the trick before I do that, in case this is the first video you see. You step on select mode and you click 111.3.111. What I'm talking about is this. You change this EOTF from auto. You see how dim this is? It's extremely dim on SDR. You have to do this over SDR. So you have to turn off HDR from the console, from Windows. You have to turn off Dolby Vision, all of that. So you change this EOTF from auto to HLG. So boom, it's just a punch in the face. It's just amazing. So let me try right now, actually, just to give you the correct information. Let's try to change the input. Just select here this input button. We come here to the three dots. Let's see if you can, let me lower the exposure so you can see that better on the video. So we come here to the three dots, edit inputs, and we're gonna change, let me see which one we have here. Number 3, HDMI number 3 we are using. So let me change HDMI number 3 to console, game console, and hit save. The only thing I want to check, so now it's game console. I was logged out for no activity, but the only thing I need to check is if I am able to change the color gamut. So I am on game optimizer. Let's go to color. Yeah, you can change it. So it's only a problem on PC mode, but on console you can change it. So you can use console mode if you don't want to go through the hassle of using the color control app. The difference is basically 4K 120. You get the full chroma 444, but on console I think it's still gonna be, it's not gonna be full chroma anyway, I think. So it's not gonna make any difference, even if like there's no, you cannot see that 444 or 422. It's not visible, so it doesn't matter. You can just use console mode and you're good to go. Let me know if you have any questions.